Um, Hi, Dr. Smith. My name is Maggie Shaughnessy, and I wanted to just first introduce myself to you. Let's see, and I get very nervous, so I wrote this down. So I'm going to do my best to try to stay focused. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you that I come to the library world through a career in teaching. I've been an elementary teacher. I started out as a kindergarten teacher, and then I was a reading specialist, which I loved. And in the last 5 years, I have been lucky enough to be the librarian at my school. So a little bit about my school, I think it's important to know. We are a K-5 dual language school. So our students are learning in English and Spanish throughout their day. So I have the challenge of providing library materials in English and Spanish. So I am actually in my library right now. So my school library is primarily print books, and the reason for that is our school district subscribes to Overdrive and Sora, so our kids have access to that. We also have a full-time computer teacher, and she ends up taking on the information literacy, the digital platforms, all the databases that teachers use, and more of the research part. So that is kind of why I have more of a print-based library still. Anyway, that's just a little bit about me. So when I was getting through doing the readings this week and thinking about the question that you posed, to be honest, I'm really coming through it from a school library perspective. So, but I also saw a lot of parallels of the challenges with a collection development with all libraries. I think there's a lot of similar challenges in what we're facing. So I tried to focus my thoughts on three main ideas that I was having. The first one I'll talk about is the idea of access. And then the second one was the use of circulation statistics in evaluating a collection. I thought that was important. I keep thinking about that. And then just finally, some ideas from a school librarian's perspective as a collection manager. So I'm going to try to stay focused on those things. So the question of why is it important to have a collection, when we have access to the internet, I think the first thing I consider is this idea of access. It's becoming more and more prevalent that information on the internet is not always accessible, especially to some more vulnerable communities. I know in our school, when we went to we shut our schools down, we did provide our students with Chromebooks and access that way, but they didn't have access to the internet. And so that was a real challenge for us to make sure that everybody had access to the internet, and that meant they had access to our school. So anyway, I'm getting off topic again, but so I think that collections are important because we do see limits to access on the internet through paywalls, subscriptions, just it's becoming more and more of an obstacle, really. So that's where I think libraries continue to be important to provide that free and hopefully equal access to everybody. And I think that's mostly probably coming from the public library perspective. I know academic libraries, you still have some challenges and obstacles to access. So I will probably miss the William Allen White Library when I am no longer an ESU student. So anyway, I noticed in Johnson's book, in the very beginning, it talks about the responsibilities of a collection manager. And that very first bulleted item, it said, selecting materials in all formats for acquisition and access. So I was really paying attention to the words all formats and access. So to me, as a collection manager, it's not just buying the print version, the e-version, and the audio version of the same book. It's allowing access to more materials and that access piece just keeps coming to mind. And then I also think too that libraries are changing their role. I noticed mostly pre-COVID and hopefully post that our libraries are being more used as a community center, and for gatherings, lectures, things like that. At least that's happening in my community. I don't know about the broader world, but so I'm seeing that people can go and borrow guitars or sewing machines or chess sets. And so I think that's a challenge for collection managers to really hone in on what their community is needing now, but also, and I find this a big challenge for me too, is to predict the trends of the future. I think that's a big challenge for collection managers as well. Okay, so here I am, my second point. And I wanted to talk a little bit about circulation statistics and using those to evaluate a collection. I know when I was reading, it was in David McMenemy's article. It talked about using being wary of using circulation statistics to evaluate a collection. And I can totally relate to that from my school perspective. So especially this year, for whatever reason, my kiddos are checking books. They love to check out books, love it so much. Now, do they read those books? The one thing I love about kids is their unabashed honesty, and they will just say, no, I didn't read it. So I have no idea. I've had this book for 3 weeks and didn't have a chance to read it. So I think in a school library, we have a challenge of seeing if kids read their books or not. So I don't think so the reason I think that's important for me is because so far I've been told that that's a good way to judge a collection and to use it in our weeding out of a collection. I know it's just one piece of it. So I kind of wonder about that. That's something that I need to learn more about, the weeding of a collection and what to use, what criteria to use for that. And I think that goes along with being a collection manager in general. Okay, so my last one I wanted to bring up was, for me, I really picked up on the part in Johnson's book when they were talking about school libraries, and particularly the role of a school librarian. And I guess it was on page 16, it says the school librarians develop collections that support learning and foster reading. So I was thinking that, that might sound pretty easy to, support learning and foster reading. Like, that's no big deal, but I think it's really hard and it's a big challenge. So in my case, our students are the primary users of the library, but I also have the challenge of supporting the curriculum. That's in our policy, our collection policy. And those two things don't always match, not always. So in my few years of being a school librarian, I've noticed that there's primarily 3 groups of users, not really users, but people I think of when I'm selecting books. So the first obviously are my students, and they are my primary focus, and they always will be. So they're the ones actually checking out the books and reading or not reading them. But so they're the ones that I focus on for reading, for selecting books. But also the second group are the teachers. And they tend to have a certain idea of what they would like the students to read. And I understand that. But it's also often different than what the students want to read. And then teachers can be, some are avid users, some are minimal users of my library. And what I mean by that is sometimes they'll come in and want books for a unit to supplement a unit of study that they're working on, or they might want to check out a picture book that kind of teaches a lesson or something more on that. That's how they tend to use the library services so far. And then the last group are parents. And I have minimal contact with parents, unfortunately, especially this year. They tend to come in when they have to pay a fine or something, but they have their own unique perspective of what books they expect their students or their children to be reading. And I know I'm generalizing here. I'm absolutely generalizing. It's not everybody, but that's just kind of a big thing that I notice. So for me, the challenge is finding the balance between what my students and my teachers and parents and want to be reading right now, and then predicting the trends in the future. That's a real big challenge for me, and I'm not good at it, and I don't know how to become better at that. But that's something that I just, in the back of my head, is a challenge for this whole idea of collection management. So those are my thoughts right now. I don't know if I answered the question, but that was what I was thinking. So I have a lot to learn about collection development. It's important to me. And I wish I had more time to dedicate to it. I would say about 80% of my day is circulation, and which is great, but it's also just so overwhelming. So I have a lot to learn, and that's all I have. So anyway, it's nice to meet you, and I look forward to learning from this class and from my peers. And okay, that's it. I'm going to stop talking now.